Hello, my name is Margie Johnson, and I'm delighted to share with you Chapter 8 of our textbook, Organizational Behavior. I hope you have enjoyed it as much as I have. Lots of practical examples and good content to help us in our journey toward communication or whatever element of business we might be engaged in. So today we're going to talk about Chapter 8, particularly entitled Decision Making and Problem Solving. So if you'll open that PowerPoint presentation that's attached to my discussion board post, I'll guide you through that and we'll talk about some of these things together. The first slide talks about decision making and problem solving. Decision making is choosing one alternative from several, while problem solving is finding the answer to a particular question. Decision making is guided by a goal. Often we have programmed decisions that are decisions we make frequently, and so they're set up in a very clear way to know that if A happens, then B. So there are some parameters set in place to keep us guided. This decision rule tells decision makers which alternative to choose once we've learned some information about the situation at hand. For example, I teach at a school, and perhaps we have a new student coming in, and our programmed decision would be that if they have had trouble at their previous school, then perhaps we would not accept them into our school, or we would accept them on a for a probationary period or in that status. So that would be a programmed decision that we might apply regularly at our school. When a non-programmed decision is present, we need problem-solving skills. We need to think, I've not seen this situation before. How might I approach it? And so back to my original example, perhaps the student is not on grade level for math. So what will we do to accommodate this student? This is not something so cut and dry, and so we tend to look deeper to problem solve. Second slide, please. So when we have a decision to make, we have varied levels of information that come to us. Sometimes we have what is termed a condition of certainty. We are pretty confident about the various alternatives and the outcomes that are likely from those alternatives. A condition of risk might be that we can't know what's going to happen, but we are educated enough on the situation to make a good decision. And then there is this condition of uncertainty, and that I think is probably the hardest position to move forward in at times, because you just don't have the information that you need to make a good decision. Go ahead and flip to the third slide, please. So when using a rational approach to decision making, it's very step by step, very logical. And so we make some choices that employ these types of characteristics. So there's a list on your slide of various ways we approach decision making if we're approaching it from a rational standpoint. The first one that is on your slide says to state the situational goal. And for our situation today, well, let's say that our student, back to my school situation, let's say that our student our goal is that we want to see this student reading on grade level, and we want to see them also retain their love of reading. So that is our situational goal. Next, we want to identify the problem. So perhaps in this situation with a student, we would gather information. We would see assessment scores. We would do some timed reading, some reading records, and other assessments to identify the problem. Then we want to determine the decision type. Is this programmed or non-programmed? Perhaps if a student is below reading level for this particular grade, there isn't something structured as a response to that, an automatic response. So instead, we have to get creative and we have to think, problem solve, if you will, how to help this student get on grade level by the end of the year while holding his love for reading. Or her love for reading. So now we're going to determine or generate some alternatives. What are some ways that we can help this student? all problems, all possible methods that we could use to help this student. So it could be tutoring, it could be parent involvement, or other accommodations that we will have to make. Then we evaluate those alternatives and we decide, will this bring us closer to our goal? Will this help this student be on a grade level reading ability by the end of the year? Not only that, by applying this method, will we also retain their love for reading? And then we're going to choose the alternative. What's the best situation right now? What's going to give us the highest payoff? And then what's the contingency plan if this doesn't work out? Then we're going to implement the plan, begin action steps on what it is that we've chosen, the alternative that we've chosen. And our text notes that sometimes there is what's called post-decision dissonance, which means that sometimes after we make a decision, we start to think, I don't know if that was really what I should have done, but here we are, we're in it, and we're just going to go for it. Lastly, you want to control or to measure and adjust. And I really think this is the work of decision making right here. We try something and we see, is it working? Are we getting the results we need? Nope. Okay, let's pull out for a minute, choose something different, try it again, and see if we get better results this time. And that flexibility is really important, especially as we approach decision making in a rational way. I love how our text says on the bottom of 308, it says decision making is a dynamic, self-correcting, and ongoing process in organizations. I love that. A wrong decision really quickly, maybe quicker than we want to know. We all know things are not right and we need to adjust. Go to the fourth slide, please. All right, on the fourth slide, you'll see behavioral approach. So relational, cut and dry, clear methods to use. Behavioral, totally different ball game. This really considers human behavior in the process. So, and our book talks about this administrative model that operates within what's called bounded rationality, which means that there's way more information than I'm ever going to get to, so I'm just going to focus on this part. And I think we do this a lot. I think I do this a lot. There's way too many things that this student struggles with, or that this particular situation could unfold, but let's just do what I know I can handle right now. And so we choose to acknowledge only a portion of the facts in this idea of bounded rationality. And then sometimes, again, we're talking about this behavioral approach to decision making. Sometimes we do what's called sub-optimizing, which means, okay, we'll just do it. It's probably not the best. We'll accept less than the best possible outcome because maybe that's just what we feel like we can do. It's the only thing we feel we can do. There's an interesting word in here, satisficing, and it talks about that there are alternatives and we examine them only until something viable comes along. And so we don't even really push through to the end at times. Sometimes we just satisfice or choose the first viable thing that comes along. There's other behavioral forces that are at work in decision making. And these, I feel like it's a lot, but I feel like it's worth really thinking about as I read these and we consider them. Think for a minute how many of them are kind of propelled by feelings, whims, even pride and things in our own life, but ways that affect our decision making. It could be political forces or coalitions, which is just this informal alliance of people that have this common goal. Intuition, I've got a gut feeling that maybe this is going to work out. An escalation of commitment, when someone stays with a decision, even when they know this is not the best thing, but we're committed and we're going to stay with it as long as we possibly can. I have seen that firsthand. Then we have risk propensity, this idea that a decision maker will gamble when they have to make a decision. They're willing to be a little risky to see, but a lot of it, again, behavior driven. And lastly, ethics, what one believes is right in a situation. So many of these things are built on our behavior, our feelings. The next slide, please. Our time is about to run out, but group decision making is a very important part of how we make our decisions. Group polarization is when we have this we have the group that comes together, and then they towards the end of the discussion, all these polarizing ideas come out because they feel more confident. Perhaps they've been convinced by someone else. And groupthink can often also be a problem at times. If you'll notice that Challenger picture here, in the Challenger explosion, that's kind of what happened, this groupthink phenomenon where they all thought it's probably okay, but there really was something wrong. And we tend to not think critically and rationally in a situation like groupthink. Um, Go ahead and turn to the next slide for time's sake, the sixth slide. It talks about the creative purpose or the creative process and how important creativity is for decision making. We can prepare and we get this vision. We're educated. We're preparing ourselves right now. We get this thing going, this preparation happening for this creative process. Then we incubate, we think, we let it ponder. I call it marinating. We sort of think about all of these things, and then there's this insight. This light sort of breaks through when we have new understanding. And then we verify, we try it. This is where the work of it is. We keep going in to see, is this going to work? What if we do it this way? It's so important to the decision making process to think creatively. So lastly, and I'm sorry to rush towards the end, I'll leave you with a question. I actually have two because I think one's kind of interesting. But my first question is, what kind of decision making do you do on a regular basis? And how does this chapter apply to you, particularly in your job or in your work or in your life? And secondly, I'm curious, do you personally ascribe to a more rational or a more behavioral approach when decision making? And why do you think that that's true of you? So I've enjoyed this time with you. Again, I'm sorry to rush at the end. That 10 minutes goes by so quickly. I look forward to seeing your presentations and being with you this semester. Thank you.